higher levels of income and well-being, correcting extreme international inequalities, and thirdly, supporting efforts of developing countries to participate actively in the provision of international public goods. The Global Partnership for Effective Development Cooperation is the global platform that brings together all development actors and endorsed the Nairobi outcome, which made the first ever set to explicit commitments related to youth and child rights organizations in the confines of development cooperation. These commitments did not come in a vacuum. We have the privilege to reflect and take you through the journey that our youth have been on. In the lead up to the second high-level meeting, youth from across the world engaged in various advocacy and lobby processes targeted at global partnerships, with the biggest of these efforts being the pre-youth meeting ahead of the second high-level meeting. This youth meeting was held a few meters from the venue of the official second high-level meeting. For the first time in global partnership, a specific side session was created for youth and children, and the discussion therein led to commitment-specific and children indicator. Guided by these commitments, African youth began the onerous task of translating these commitments into technical processes that has taken a few years. And children. As we head toward the third high-level meeting to be held in Geneva, we are keen to generate evidence at the national level to showcase the importance of youth and children indicator to the global partnership, especially in the work of 2030 agenda, which is leaving no one behind. Zimbabwe leads the process, with Kenya and Zambia set to launch their processes next week, and others beyond the African continent, that is the European region, the Asian region, Latin America, and the Pacific region, are set to launch their country processes next month in June. From this journey, we have learned a few lessons from the journey of African youth and child rights organizations. The lessons we have undertaken are as follows. Number one, inclusive partnerships are possible, and within the global partnership, we have inclusive partnerships in motion. Number two, data and evidence remain the key pillars to renew and anchor commitments related to development cooperation. Number four, as Africa, we can stand tall and derive narratives to beyond the African borders towards a renewed and shared global partnership, inclusive to all. With these words, allow me on behalf of our youth, our secretariat, and the Nayo board to welcome you to the launch of the Youth and Children Indicator Processes for Zimbabwe. The ongoing review of the Global Partnership Monitoring, our membership and partnership with the CSO platform for development effectiveness, that's been instrumental over the years. Ladies and gentlemen, I thank you.
Right, another hand of applause for our board member.
All right, thank you very much. Good morning, everyone. I should be seeing people in the room excited, but it looks like they're very busy. Some are behind their laptops, some are in front of their phones, others are still trying to worm their way into the meeting. But just to welcome you, thank you very much to our Treasurer, Ms. Sebastian Mazao, for warmly welcoming us this morning. So basically, we are gathered here today. We have three key issues that we hope to cover by the end of this meeting. The first one, I'm sure when we all got the that we have been undertaking as youth and child rights organizations in Africa, which is why on this particular morning we're quite excited to actually be bringing to you a product from the work that has been happening in the previous years. And most of this is inspired by Agenda 2030. We are also here to share with you on the country process that we're going to be undertaking for the kind of data that we need to collect for submission to the Global Partnership as youth and child rights organizations in Zimbabwe. Lastly, we also hope as part of this meeting to work on one of our data sets, which is the multi-stakeholder data set. So I think with those remarks, it gives us a foundation in terms of the objectives of this particular meeting. We are encouraging you to utilize your social media platforms and handles. We are the tech generation, so we do not apologize for trending. We do not apologize for coming up with these hashtags for every meeting. So our hashtag is going to be hashtag DEV. We also put our work under the hashtag Leave No Youth Behind. So this meeting is going to be live streamed. So you might also need to take note of that. And we also have colleagues that are joining us online. So the meeting is also hybrid in nature. So I think with those remarks, allow us to proceed and move into one of our most important sessions in our program, which is the session where we are going to have a bit of protocol. In the room, we've got child and youth rights organizations. And specifically, we have this kind of audience today for a specific reason, which is the momentum and the excitement that I got Mr. Brian Nagwande, who is the acting director for the Zimbabwe Youth Council. I'm sure all of us, we are quite aware of the importance of the Zimbabwe Youth Council, which is the pivotal role to play in terms of coordination, in terms of policy, and also in terms of ensuring that there is as young people within our country towards development. So allow me at this point in juncture to call Mr. Brian Nkwande.
Can I do it from here?
Right. I wish to welcome everyone to this very important meeting. I think it's one of its kind where we are gathering here to witness meetup regarding youth and child indicator. I think as Zimbabwe Youth Council, we are very much excited that this has happened. I think it all goes to show the importance that organizations are putting vis-a-vis the largest to Mr. Nayo, and to say that effective partnerships are a cornerstone of achieving the 2030 agenda for sustainable development, and reaching sustainable development goals requires urgent action on effective partnerships as called for in SDG number 17. Realize us to deliver sustainable solutions for people and planet while leaving no one behind. I think this also resonates with the government blueprint, the MDS1, I think which the mantra is very clear on leaving no place and no one behind. The global partnership monitoring exercises country-led, voluntary, and aims at strengthening multi-sector stakeholder dialogue at country, regional, and global level, and is focused on quality of partnering that takes place to deliver development results and outcomes. The global partnership reports on program ownership, focus on results, inclusive partnerships, and transparency and mutual accountability. We are gathered here today for the launch of the Youth and Children Indicator, a tool that is going to give development cooperation the capacity to reflect more on the lived realities of youth and children, most of whom live in conditions of hardship. Our contribution and participation in youth and children as a collective is important. The Zimbabwe Youth Council is mandated through an act of parliament to coordinate and lead work on youth development in the country, with some of its flagship programs being the junior parliament, which is going to be taking place. The deadline session of that junior parliament is going to happen in 2 weeks' time, which is the 18th of June. And also we coordinate junior councils which continue to spread across various districts to ensure participation, of course, positively influence the global partnership. I think this is a very important development. Right as we speak, the Ministry of Youth, Sports, Arts and Recreation is seized with coming up with a youth act. It will be very important that we have an act of parliament that is data and research informed. So what we are witnessing today should also culminate into contributions of the national youth. I thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Nkwande. Now we're going to give the floor to Miss Musiwa from Nango. So we may give a hand as she comes.
Thank you very much, and let me recognize my youth sector representative in the Northern Region, Ms. Masie, who is here present, and our children's sector representative, ZNCWC Reverend Nyandete. Thank you, Nayo, for the opportunity to also present in this platform. We no one who will be left behind by making sure to reach to those who live in the furthest areas. In essence, this means taking clear actions to extend extreme poverty, to end extreme poverty, to curb inequality, to confront discrimination, as well as to fast-track progress for those living in the furthest behind. When we talk of some people being left behind, who exactly are we referring to? And why is it that some people are being left behind? In the most cases, people processes. These are people living in extreme poverty and those disadvantaged or deprived of choices and opportunities compared to others in the societies. And in most cases, these are our youth and our children. There are 5 factors or 5 key drivers contributing to other people being left behind, and these include discrimination. This is the exclusion and mistreatment faced by people based on one or more aspects of their identity, class, disability, sexual orientation, religion, nationality, indigenous or migratory status, and our youth and children constitute a bigger number of these people who are left behind. The second factor is geographical location. Others are left behind due to their geographical location, proximity to public service provisions, and lack of proper transport infrastructure, access to internet or other infrastructure gaps due to their area of residence. The third factor is governance. Other people are disadvantaged due to ineffective, unjust, unaccountable, or unresponsive global, national, and sub-national institutions. These people are affected by inequitable, inadequate, or unjust laws, policies. These are our children and youth. Then the fourth factor is socio-economic status. These are people who are deprived because of lack of income, short life expectancy due to failure to access quality health, care, and educational attainment, making them to fail to compete in the labor market. Lack of clean water, sanitation, energy, and social protection. We have youth who have never been employed ever since they were born because they lack the required skills, and some have got skills, but they cannot find the jobs. Then the last one is shocks and fragility as one of the driving factors that is causing other people to be left behind. And some people are left behind due to negative life situations they would have been exposed to. These life situations of the affected people and destruction of infrastructure, violence and conflict situations leading to displacement and migration, health emergencies, e.g. the pandemics that we are currently experiencing, the non-performing economies, and the ever-increasing prices are pushing youth and children to the far end, and they are being disadvantaged and discriminated. It is critical for countries to understand and address these drivers that are causing people to be left behind by collecting and using disaggregated data and evidence-based information to inform decision-making and policy formulation changes. For countries to achieve the SDGs, those left behind should be empowered to enable them to meaningfully contribute and participate in the development discourse. For Zimbabwe to achieve the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development, there's need for effective partnerships that embrace the whole of society approach that builds on the collective actions of all stakeholders as partners in development. A whole of society that opens up the operating space to all partners for developmental processes and promotion of full effective participation for all. A whole of society that embraces children, youth and children as partners in development contribute in the development of the global youth and child indicators. Nayo, through its regional offices, will support Nayo and Zimbabwe National Council for Welfare of Children and other like-minded institutions and stakeholders in the data collection exercise and throughout the whole process. We envisage that youth and children indicator will strengthen and increase transparency and predictability of development, cooperation towards youth and children, as well as inform engagements on national policy dialogues on youth and children, and will assist in stimulating collective action for strengthened results towards youth and children national development priorities. The integrated nature of SDGs demands collaboration and cooperation across all sectors, as well as partnerships with youth and children in the local communities that better understand how best the challenge they are facing can be addressed. Moreover, the 2030 Agenda is unique in that positive achievements under one goal will also contribute in the progression of the other goals. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ms. Musiwa. Platform. Right, a round of applause as he comes forward.
Okay, good morning once again. Thank you, Nayo and the TLCWC for this important event. I think in terms of if we are to achieve our SDGs, the starting point really is we need to know where we are. And this exercise, which helps us to collect data, is very important in terms of coming up with the right policies, in terms of coming up with the right programs. And also, I mean, as the Zimbabwe CSO reference group on SDGs, where we also even improve on the data that our government is collecting through the various ministries, through ZimStat and other agencies. So I think there's always been the call for better and quality data that is also generated by CSO. So I guess this is a starting point in terms of improving our national statistics. So I thank you so much to Nayo and CWC for such
So as Mr. Chepo Ngoma, Head of Business Innovation and Entrepreneurship, Sayof gets ready to give his remarks virtually, I think we can call upon Reverend Tinyanete from ZNWC to come and give us some remarks on behalf of Youth and Child Rights CSOs. So over to you, Rev.
Not intimidated. I feel like, young people, there should be a lot of energy coming through. Sakabatinzo energy yacho. And I want to thank Nayo for inviting us and also acknowledging Nayo when it comes to youth development in the country. I asked my colleague, Kuzai Coast, to do a night job. But then I also felt I needed to come through. So mine will be more challenges than to read out what she has prepared. I just want to salute the government of Zimbabwe, one, for having a specific section on youth within the constitution. And they've also gone further to ensure that there is a policy, although it's kind of now requires revision, because the last one was 2018. So I'm told they are revising it, but it's important for such policy documents. One of the challenges I have with X is that if they're not supported with finance, then they're always difficult to implement. And Moses, so so we want to encourage Onyakwante is they put the act in place to ensure administratively it has financial muscle to implement the act itself. But speaking to leave no one behind, one of the challenges that I've seen in Zimbabwe is the issue of children without identities. But now I may not, do you come across these children? But when you don't have a birth or an ID, you're already left behind. Whatever happens in your life, you're always behind. And we see this when it comes to grade 7 and O-level exams or A-level, where children queue up and want to obtain an identity. It's already too late. An identity is supposed to participate in national development, because without that, they cannot participate. And I also want Nayo, as you work on the indicator, to say we have vast tracts of land that are underutilized in Zimbabwe. How many young people are participating in agriculture? We're an agro-based economy. Hakuna doubt about that. So we need to ensure that young people participate in agriculture. On paper, some people may claim that Brazil, Chichi, but it's underutilized. Where are the young people? They could be taking advantage of that. So I want to really appeal tonight to push government to ensure that youth participation in agriculture is scaled up.
because that's the only way that we can be independent when we hire to conduct. They also want to encourage Nayo to ensure that the national budget, the biggest, and you said 70%, or yeah, but not 67% are young people. But does the budget speak to that? Does it speak to that? If it doesn't, then we need to do something to ensure that more allocation of resources are going through to young people in the country, because they are our future. After this, I want to invite Kudzi to come through and speak in a piece of presentation. Thank you. Over to you.
Thank you, Rev. All protocols observed. As the Zimbabwe National Council for the Welfare of Children, representing the Child Rights Coalition and broader child rights CSOs sector in the country, we are delighted and excited to be spearheading the development process of the Youth and Child Indicator perspective into monitoring the impact of development programs and development cooperation, looking at the following. What benefits do children and young people gain from development cooperation or development programs? What is the impact of development cooperation projects on children and young people? What is the extent and what are the opportunities for child and youth participation in decision-making in the development policy making? We realize that in these platforms, they are high-level platforms, and children and young people usually are not physically present, or in groups of children and young people included in the dialogue platforms concerning development programs and development cooperation. That is the girl child, children and young people with disabilities, children or young people who are in marginalized areas amongst other vulnerable groups. So this indicator focuses on strengthening and using countries' domestic institutions, increasing transparency of development cooperation towards youth and children. It supports better engagement and partnership for foreign and domestic partners in development towards youth and children. Therefore, is meeting set standards by various human
My name is Alan Chipoy and I'm here talking about our voter registration.
My name is McDonald Kumbaya Munyoro and I work with the National Association of Youth Organizations, Nayo. We are in a very exciting time within our country as young people, where we have the Zimbabwe
Challenges.
My name is Alan Chipoy and I'm here
As the meeting progresses, so going to move on to another section of our program where we're going to have a visual presentation on the global partnership and its monitoring work. So I think we're going to have some slides being put on the screen. Those who are on our virtual platform, I think we're going to share the screen with you as well. So I think we can follow up on that.
My name is McDonald Munyoro, and I work with the National Association of Youth Organizations, Nayo. We are in a very exciting time within our country as young people, where we have the Zimbabwe Election Commission coming out into our different communities in what they are calling a mobile voter registration blitz. This means that officials and workers within the Zimbabwe Election Commission
So this is a youth and children's meeting, right? And we had one of our most senior and respected elders in the room, just reminding us that we are young and so this was a song that we did when we were in Zambia in our last meeting, when we were training each other to come and conduct the country work, which is going to be happening across selected African countries and in other regions, as has been highlighted earlier. So I need all of us to stand up so that we can do our own Zimbabwean version of maximum support unity around the youth and children's indicator. So I'm going to give over the mic to Paddington to lead us. Maximum support, maximum support. I'm not the best of singers, so I'm going to do a disclaimer before we attack. Maximum support, maximum support. That is it. Come on, bring on the moko. You have to stretch even. You have to do it. You have to do it. Now, there's a 9%. Just that is it. Maximum support. Maximum support. Because some of the even vision too. How will it sport? Maximum support. Maximum support. Maximum support. Maximum support. All right, so I think it looks like it is what I did last time. I need to hit that code. All right, so morning once again, colleagues, as we are just trying to put on our technology, can we also just please stand up? We need to keep you on your feet this morning. You are here for youth and children. And I'm sure those that have children, you know where they are. They are playing, huh? Jumping all over and up. So just to familiarize with the importance of this meeting, we just need to put a lot of slogans into our meeting, huh? So that we can begin to internalize some of these things which are going to be very, very important as we move forward. So I'm going to be giving you the development effectiveness principles. When I give you a principle, and then we shout youth and child indicator, and so that you also begin to internalize these. For the benefit of those that might know, we work with 4 specific development. So the first one is ownership of development priorities by developing countries. So we're going to try our slogan. Ownership of development priorities by developing countries. Then we say youth and child indicator. Are we okay? Yeah. Fantastic. Ownership of development priorities by developing countries. Ownership of development priorities by developing countries. Fantastic. The second one is inclusive partnerships. Inclusive partnerships. Inclusive partnerships. Fantastic. The third one is focus on results. Focus on results. Focus on results. Focus on results. All right, fantastic. So as I go into my presentation, I will be doing the slogan so that we move together. Otherwise, thank you very much. You may take your seats. So this morning we have created a few slides that we hope can give some of us that are in this meeting a bit of perspective into what the global partnership is, or what they call the Global Partnership for Effective Development Cooperation. So we have created some slides which combine a bit of visual, video, and also audio to help us to sort of like get an understanding of why we are here and why we have the kind of excitement that we have today. So we encourage you to just pay attention to the slides as we start. All right.
Because it aims to eliminate poverty in all its forms, we need new and better ways of working together. While there has been remarkable progress, 1 in 5 people in developing countries still lives on less than $1.90 a day, limiting access to education, food, and healthcare, among other basic requirements. In addition, environmental and economic volatility and crises of increasing complexity impact our ability to reach those most vulnerable. Combating poverty and leaving no one behind will require the most effective use of resources and the establishment of innovative partnerships to make a real difference in the lives of those most in need. In 2011, 161 countries, represented by all levels of the development community came together in Busan, South Korea at the fourth high-level forum on aid effectiveness and called for the establishment of a global partnership to improve the way we work together to deliver development results. The Global Partnership for Effective Development Cooperation provides practical support and shares knowledge to boost the impact of development resources worldwide. With the participation of governments from developing and developed countries, civil society, international organizations, the business community, and others, the Global Partnership is an inclusive platform, working to ensure that partnerships focus on four internationally agreed effective cooperation principles. Countries' ownership of their own development process, a focus on results, inclusive partnerships, and transparency and mutual accountability to one another. The Global Partnership is a hub for sharing knowledge on ways to make resources more effective. By recognizing that countries should drive their own development, the Global Partnership helps track progress towards implementing the four effective cooperation principles. The Global Partnership also gathers success stories and lessons learned around development cooperation, ensuring that no country needs to reinvent the wheel, but can learn from the development experiences and challenges of others. Most importantly, the Global Partnership builds political momentum and ensures accountability for countries and their partners to deliver on development effectiveness commitments by convening regular high-level events attended by development leaders from governments, civil society, the business community, and others. Through the work of the Global Partnership and with the spirit of mutual respect and mutual benefit, we can turn effective cooperation and partnerships into increased well-being for those most in need. By maximizing the quality and impact of development resources, we can create the best possible world for people and the planet.
In September 2015, at the United Nations in New York, the international community agreed on a set of goals to guide development efforts over the next 15 years. The Sustainable Development Goals are an ambitious and diverse set of 17 goals driving global, regional, and national development efforts. They encompass a range of development issues on everything from stamping out poverty and reducing inequality to empowering women and combating climate change.
The SDGs are probably the most ambitious international development cooperation agenda ever. Never before has the international community agreed on 17 goals, 169 targets, and over 300 indicators that would then be developed as we hope they will be, or as we see they are already being implemented at the country level in national development plans that aim at sustainability.
The SDGs provide clear guidelines and targets for all countries to adopt in accordance with their own national priorities and specific challenges.
Now, all that is not an agenda anymore for the poorest countries of the world. This is an agenda for the entire planet, for all the people of the world. From that perspective, it is a universal agenda for international.
The international community recognizes that achieving the SDGs by 2030 depends on joint efforts and investments. No one can accomplish such a bold agenda alone. The SDGs explicitly and innovatively recognize the role of multi-stakeholder partnerships and the complementary roles that governments, the business community, civil society, and others can play to realize the SDGs by 2030.
The SDGs require everybody in the appropriate form, between government, the private sector, the NGOs, and the population in general. This was not the case before.
While the Sustainable Development Goals focus on outcomes of development efforts, such as ending extreme poverty, the Global Partnership for Effective Development Cooperation is a multi-stakeholder network focusing on the core building, knowledge and technology transfer, and policy guidance.
The power of multi-stakeholder partnerships cannot be overestimated. It is going to be key to the achievement of the 2030 agenda.
The global partnership brings together all stakeholders of the development cooperation agenda, from developing and developed countries, the business community, philanthropy, and others to increase the effectiveness of development resources worldwide. It has the tools and resources to contribute to better implementation of the SDGs in three distinct ways. 1. Monitoring and review of development partnerships.
The global partnership has been very strong on that, has been very strong on providing evidence to the countries that have to then make budgetary decisions, make policy and legislation decisions, and also to the donors who have to make funding decisions based on those data. There's nothing better than a strong body of evidence to then achieve results with more emphasis or with more speed wherever one identifies the development priorities.
2. Ensuring political momentum for effective development partnerships. The global partnership also provides a unique space for all actors to engage in evidence-based discussion on how to improve the effectiveness, quality, and impact of development cooperation in support of achieving the SDGs.
The key element is going to be dialogue, and that is one reason why the global partnership for effective development cooperation is going to be key to the process, because it provides that platform which we are all truly on an equal footing.
The global partnership is one more of the, but a very important, of the platforms that bring the SDGs to the fore, that generate momentum, that get very important people in their governments and outside governments to discuss and debate and see what the bottlenecks are, the difficulties, but also the early victories, the achievements, and so forth. So, from the point of view of accountability, from the point of view of visibility, the global partnership serves the agenda and supports the agenda very powerfully.
3. Supporting knowledge sharing and country-level development partnerships. The global partnership provides a platform for knowledge exchange on effective cooperation and innovative partnerships that countries can use to achieve the 2030 agenda in their own unique context. No country needs to reinvent the wheel, but can instead consider its peer successes and lessons learned.
Which countries are doing well? Why? We discussed these. We have had a discussion twice for the African countries coming together, for example, to discuss how various countries are actually mobilizing to achieve the SDGs. We have sat together to discuss about how we mobilize the resources. We've had development partners attending such meetings, helping us to see how revenues can be mobilized more effectively than it was before. And it has been working.
Improving the effectiveness and impact of development resources and achieving the ambitious 2030 agenda will require inclusive partnerships and innovative solutions. To accomplish the international commitments to end poverty, protect the planet, and ensure prosperity for all by 2030, the Global Partnership for Effective Development Cooperation has a key role to play.
Right, so the two presentations have tried to give us an overview of what the global partnership does and works towards. And I think as we are part of this meeting, the key important aspects that we need to highlight is that the global partnership is a multi-stakeholder vehicle for driving issues around development effectiveness. And basically with development effectiveness, we are trying to look at the how aspects of development to ensure that if certain investments are made, there are certain returns that come. If we are towards education, then it must mean that every boy and child must have access to education. And we're also trying to focus at issues of maximizing the effectiveness of all forms of cooperation, whether it is South to South cooperation, North to South cooperation, or whatever form of cooperation that it might be, for the shared benefits of people, planet, prosperity, and peace. And this is where the matrix of Agenda 2030 comes into play, because at the essence of the Sustainable Development Goals is to ensure that there are shared benefits to the people, planet, prosperity, and peace that is for all. So the platform brings together governments, bilateral and multilateral organizations, civil society, the private sector, and representatives from parliament and trade unions, among others, who are committed to strengthening the effectiveness of their partnerships for development. And I think it might also be important for us to understand that the GPEDC has the kind of political clout that it has on a global sphere on account of the Paris Declaration, which tries to answer serious questions that have been raised over, I think, 50 years of development aid in Africa and in other parts of the world. And at that meeting where the Paris Declaration was signed, each country was represented by its respective finance minister. So in the case of Zimbabwe, it means that we're actually one of those signatories for the Paris Declaration. So what has been happening from the Paris Declaration up to now, there's been a series of high-level meetings. And in each high-level meeting, there are always commitments that are made. Because I'm sure, as you have seen from the video presentations around the work of the Global Partnership, you'd find that the issue of generating evidence, of generating data, is very much at the heart of what the Global Partnership does. So it means that at each and every one of these meetings, of these high-level meetings, people always reflect and look at what is happening with a view of improving. So the GPEDC supports practical implementation of effective development cooperation principles. I think already we've been trying to hammer the principles into us colleagues who are attending this particular meeting. It promotes mutual accountability and works to sustain political momentum for more effective cooperation and partnerships. We continue to emphasize the idea of political momentum because, as you can see, the global partnership is a process which is heavy on government. For instance, if I'm going to talk about generating data in Zimbabwe, yes, civil society can complement that effort, but the responsibility, for instance, lies more with the ZimStats. For instance, is ZimStats generating the kind of data that could benefit the particular process that the global partnership undertakes in its high-level meetings? And then it might also be important for us to be familiar with development cooperation. I think already in the opening remarks, our board treasurer, Mr. Simbarashi Mazao, has spoken to the aspect to do with development cooperation. Effectiveness principles, these are the 4 principles I think that we've been sharing since morning. The last one, I think, which I missed when we shared them earlier, is transparency and accountability. And the last also term there is CSO effectiveness. Because as you have realized, or as you have noticed, civil society organizations actually have a place within the global partnership. As we speak today, through lobby and advocacy, you'd find that civil society actually sits within the global partnership as one of the co-chairs. But if you're to reflect on how the global partnership was structured 3 years back, there was no seat for civil society. And this is an acknowledgement to say that civil society are independent development actors. And I'm sure we can all relate to the function and the work of civil society organizations, which is around accountability, around trying to create the bridge between service delivery and citizens having access to them, among other initiatives that we work on as civil society organizations. Then more critically, the Nairobi Outcome Document. This was a document which was agreed on in 2016 in Nairobi, Kenya, when the Global Partnership held what it called the HLM2, which is the second high-level meeting. This was a meeting which brought together more than 161 countries, in 56 organizations. And the idea of the meeting was to reflect on the 4 principles of effective development cooperation and provide for a more equal and empowered partnerships and more sustainable development outcomes. And I'm sure from the opening remarks that were given earlier on, you can also relate to some of the processes that young people did ahead of the second high-level meeting in Nairobi, Kenya, where they had a big side event just before the kickoff of the second high-level meeting. And the whole idea of some of those advocacy and lobby initiatives was for the global partnership to reflect and see the importance of engaging and working with youth and children in the context of development cooperation. So as with every meeting, when the partnership meets at the global level, there are specific commitments which are made, and as part of the Nairobi outcome document, we had for the specific commitments that were made towards youth and children, and these were made in the context of the global partnership. So I'm going to identify someone who can read for us the first one, which is 89. If I can give it to Marcia, you can just pass it. It's at the back. Can you pass it later? To just read for us the specific commitment on bullet 89.
We reiterate our commitment under the 23rd agenda and the Addis Ababa Action Agenda to invest in the development of children and youth furthest left behind. We recognize that investing in children and youth is critical to achieving inclusive, equitable, and sustainable development for present and future generations. And we recognize the need to support countries that face particular challenges to make the requisite investments in this area. We also reaffirm the importance of urgently improving reporting on child-focused ODA and domestic spending for improved monitoring of progress on the above commitments.
All right, thank you very much. Maybe we can have a lady from this side volunteering to read for us the second slide.
I can't see.
You can come closer.
Okay, thank you. We commit to, firstly, that A, promote and protect the rights of children and youth, ensuring that they live free from violence, exploitation, and harm in order to develop their full capabilities. Secondly, strengthen capacity and create the space and necessary mechanisms for the meaningful participation of children and youth in the implementation and the monitoring of the 2030, should be Agenda 2030. Agenda at the local, national, and international level. And we also commit to promote the productive capacities of youth, expand economic and social opportunities for decent work.
Right, thank you very much. So these were the commitments that were made through the Nairobi outcome document. And this was the first time that reference was given to youth and children. And I'm sure, as you can see, when it talks about children, it is high on saying child rights organizations, because their assumption in that particular meeting was that children cannot walk into that meeting and represent themselves. So it would mean that child rights organizations would have a pivotal role to play within the global partnership on account of the important constituency which they represent of children. So what has been happening since 2016 up to now is that young people in Africa have been having several meetings where we've been trying to translate Because remember, these are meetings where, your government is there, civil society is there, parliament is there, philanthropy is there, regional organizations are there. There's a multiplicity of actors. So over the years from 2016 up to now, working very closely with the support of the Kenyan government, we've been trying to translate those commitments into this particular youth indicator. And this was a process that happened. It was led by young people in Africa. We created what is called the Africa Youth Technical Group, which were young people in Africa that worked on developing the youth and child indicator. So this thing did not come from someone who is there, but it was actually young people piecing it together over a defined period of time to allow us to come to a point where we can actually say that we now have the youth indicator. So the question then must be, so what is the youth and children indicator? Like, why did we have to invest so much time? And why did development partners also invest so much money into just 2 bullets of commitment? Because, for instance, if you look at other actors like civil society, philanthropy, the commitments are quite several. But you find that for youth and children, it's just those 2 bullets. So you find that the indicator focuses on strengthening it focuses on strengthening and using countries' domestic institutions, increasing transparency and predictability of development cooperation towards youth and children. In the earlier remarks that were made by Nango, Ms. Musiwa highlighted the importance of predicting aid, or rather predictability of development cooperation. So we're developing all of this in the context of towards youth and children. For instance, if you've got a Ministry of Finance, does it have the kind of mechanisms to pick the kind of aid flows that are going to youth and children in our country? If we do not have, then through this process, we must get to a point where progressively as a country, we have systems in place that can track the kind of flows that are going to youth and child rights organizations within the country. The second aspect is that it supports better engagement and partnership of foreign and domestic partners in development towards and with youth and children. I'm sure we all want to be invited to sit on the table as youth and child rights organizations when a development agency is coming up with a new strategy, a new program. And I'm sure some of us can relate with some of these engagements. But the idea is that progressively we need to be more inclusive when some of these processes are structured. So this is why we came up with the Youth and Children Indicator to help us to focus on strengthening and using countries' domestic institutions, increasing transparency and accountability, and predictability of development cooperation towards youth and children. Already we know that if you look at the global population, we are quite a demographic presence, even here in Africa, even here in Zimbabwe. And then specifically, we also are coming up with this indicator to allow us to do 4 key things. The first one is to assess progress, opportunities, and obstacles in aligning stakeholders' efforts and partnerships with the effectiveness principles towards youth and children in development effectiveness. I'm sure earlier on from one of the presentations you had the finance minister from Malawi speaking and saying that the idea is that when we meet, we need to see who's doing what is working, so that we can share and learn and exchange from each other. So we hope that the indicator can be able to generate evidence and data which can allow us to assess progress, opportunities, and obstacles within that context. Then the second one is improving the quality, impact, and effectiveness of development cooperation towards youth and children. For instance, you are a development organization. It could be an NGO, it could be a bilateral or multilateral institution. Does it have a specific program or facility which channels development support to youth and child rights organizations? If it does not have, then it also means that progressively that particular agency must begin to do some work around supporting youth and child rights organizations in the context of development cooperation. Thirdly, the results of the monitoring exercise provide a concrete foundation on which youth and children can hold governments, development partners, and other stakeholders accountable to ensure effectiveness commitments are met with action. So the beauty of the Nairobi outcome document is these commitments were made by all these actors towards youth and children. So it means that post the Nairobi outcome document, we need to be holding them to account for each of those bullets that was read in the previous presentation. Because as we have also heard earlier, one of the key principles is around transparency and mutual accountability, where we commit to each other based on the commitments that come from each meeting. Then the last one is the indicator generates data for countries to assess their progress towards achieving 20 SDG targets in 6 key SDGs. The first one is goal number 2 on ending hunger, goal number 4 on ending education, goal number 5 on gender equality, goal number 8 on decent work, and goal number 10 on inequality. So in essence, what the youth and child indicator is also allowing us to do is to speak to the leave no one behind ethos, which is espoused in the Sustainable Development Goals. And I'm sure for those that are doing programming around the youth and children and the SDGs, you'd also be familiar with some of the targets that are within these goals that relate to youth and children. Then, in terms of conceptualizing the youth and children indicator, we also had to ask ourselves a critical question of saying, what then are we seeking to measure through this indicator? So that we can have, or we can bring value to the table for the global partnership. Because I'm sure, as you can see, it's a very systematic, process and platform, and they are quite serious about data and evidence. So to really think and say, based on the commitments that we made, what then can we put on the table and commit ourselves to measure through the youth and children indicator? So we are looking at tracking development stakeholders' progress in aligning their policies and practices with 4 internationally agreed development effectiveness principles. Already we have talked about this: country ownership, inclusive partnerships, focus on results, transparency, and mutual accountability. And for us to be able to do this, we're to come up with 5 different dimensions of the youth indicator, and each dimension, it helps us to pick on a specific principle within those 4 principles. The first one is aid towards children and youth. At the heart of development cooperation is trying to answer what is happening in terms of aid. So we find that from the youth and children indicator, one of the dimensions looks at aid towards children and youth. And there we are specifically interested in what the government is doing, in what development partners are doing. And it's very important here for us to highlight that our focus is at the national level or the country level. Then the second dimension is budget towards children and youth. Here we're specifically trying to look at the national budget. We are in year 2022 from the budget that was approved by Parliament. what has been some of these flows towards children and youth? And here we must remember that in the context of the global partnership, the key and biggest actor is the government, with all of us rallying around these governments to complement what they are doing at national level. Then the third one is engagement and participation, where we're trying to look into and say that as youth and child rights organizations within our own countries, are they frameworks that allow for our engagement and participation within the work that development partners do, that governments do? For instance, we had earlier on Mr. Nagwadi talking about the National Development Strategy, NDS1. When the government pursues such a development goal, does it consult, does it engage youth and child rights organizations? Because also remember that in the context of the global partnership, dialogue is very important. Then the fourth one, it also looks at legal and regulatory environment for youth structures, enterprises, CSOs, and state structures. And it's quite exciting to learn and to know that the Zimbabwe Youth Council is actually in the process of coming up with the Zimbabwe Youth Bill. In other processes, as Nayo, we've also tried to contribute towards that. But specifically on this dimension, we're trying to look at the legal and the regulatory environment for youth and child rights organizations, to say that is the environment enabling for them to fully engage in the global partnership, or in the spirit of the global partnership. The last one is youth employment and opportunities, in brackets, capacity and skills. And here we're trying to speak to the issue of decent work, which was raised in one of the commitments. So you find that our questions there, they tend to focus more on youth, because we have to also sit around the table and say that, can we talk of child employment or employing children? And of course, in Africa, we came across different legal frameworks. Some countries allow a child to work from his age 16, they call it supervised work. But I think for this process, we ended up just saying that for the purposes of work and decent work, let's rather have this dimension focusing specifically on young people aged between the ages of 18 to 35 years. But then, of course, at the end of the day, why all of this? We hope that by coming up with the youth and children indicator, we should be able to do two key things. The first one, we should be able to stimulate and inform national policy dialogue with youth and children, and spur continued collective action for strengthened results towards youth and children in national development priorities and programs. I'm sure for all of us in our different constituencies, we are always saying we need children and youth on the table. We need a seat on the table. So this could be a key instrument that can help us to begin to answer those particular issues about youth and children becoming more visible, especially at the national level. Then the second issue there is to inform the Sustainable Development Goals and financing for development, follow-up and review processes with a focus on youth and children in 20 targets for 6 SDGs. So it means that this youth and children's indicator, it should be able to help us to measure progress that is also specific to those 6 Sustainable Development Goals that we gave reference to in the previous slides. And I think for anyone who's working within the youth and child rights constituency, this would actually be a bonus, because what it means is this data and evidence will be going straight to the global partnership. And as you can see, the global partnership is also anchored on Agenda 2030. It's one of those main vehicles which is also being used to track progress.
In a new era of global challenges,
to strengthen trust at country level and transform the way we work together. Effective partnerships that are country-led, transparent, focused on results, and involving all partners are a catalyst for sustainable impact and will help deliver our long-term development vision for people and the planet. During 12 to 14 December, key stakeholders from all over the world will convene in Geneva, Switzerland to agree to a joint commitment for more action, a new set of practices for better implementation, a renewed way of monitoring for more evidence, a revitalized global partnership for effective development cooperation. Let's practice practical sustainable pathways for a just recovery and better future for all.
That's a really interesting.
Global challenges, the pandemic, a deep climate emergency, conflicts, and many economic shocks. We need to strengthen trust at country level and transform the way we work together. Effective partnerships that are country-led, transparent, focused on results, and involving all partners are a catalyst for sustainable impact and will help deliver our long-term development vision for people and the planet. During 12 to 14 December, key stakeholders from all over the world will convene in Geneva, Switzerland to agree to a joint commitment for more action, a new set of practices for better implementation, a renewed way of monitoring for more evidence, a revitalized global partnership for effective development cooperation. Let's practice practical, sustainable pathways for a just recovery and better future for all.
All right, so this is the third high-level meeting. I'm sure earlier on you had been talking about the second high-level meeting, right? So we are now towards the third high-level meeting, which is supposed to happen in December. And I think at the heart of that particular meeting, you know, is that clarion call there to say that, okay, let me see, to say that, all right, our challenges are complicated and we need effective partnerships to work to solve our issues together. I'm sure we all can relate to what has been happening with COVID-19, with what is happening in terms of climate change. In places that we've never seen floods, we're seeing floods. That we've never seen heat waves, we're seeing heat waves. There is so much that is happening around climate change. We've also seen even war erupting in places that we never thought it would actually erupt. And the consequences of all of these processes have been very immediate across the world. So it also means that we are living in a context where a lot of things and shifts are happening. And this gives importance to the work that happens under the global partnership. And it's very important for us to appreciate that all this work that has been happening and which is also going to be happening around collecting data at the country level. The idea is that we hope that when we go to the third high-level meeting in Geneva, we are able to bring on the table evidence and data from the youth and children's indicator and actually say that this is what we're able to find and this is how it can contribute to the global partnership in terms of beginning to evidence these two actors, which is youth and child rights organizations. So critically, the HLM3 is going to happen at the midpoint of Agenda 2030. So it will spotlight a lot of things around what needs to change and happen for us to be able to achieve Agenda 2030.
The presentation has alluded to some of the pressing challenges that we face as well. And it has also stressed the importance of partnerships that we need to be doing to ensure that we solve some of these pressing challenges. So colleagues, comrades, friends, this is the work of the Global Partnership. This is also the Youth and Children Indicator. And this is also the process that has led us to where we are today. Thank you very much.
All right, and again for Mr. Mignolo for such an in-depth presentation. So now is the time that we get to take a health break. So during this health break, we are going to be served some tea in the room that is just adjacent to the exit from that door. So I think we can all proceed for the tea. May we all kindly be back by 11:10. I'm sure we can try and have a working tea if the time is not enough. So I think you can just go grab some tea, refresh, and then by 11:10, we should all be back and seated in here. And then please, if you haven't registered, please can you kindly come and see me.
My name is Alan Chipoy and I'm here talking about voter registration.
My name is McDonald Kumbera and I work with the National Association of Youth Organizations, Nayo. We are in a very exciting time within our country as young people, where we have the Zimbabwe Election Commission coming out into our different communities in what they are calling a mobile voter registration blitz. This means that officials and workers within the Zimbabwe Election Commission are coming to our different communities across Zimbabwe, where they are seeking to meet and interact with first-time voters. These are people that are seeking to register to vote, and most of these people fall within the category of young people or youth.
What is needed to register to vote? The people of Zimbabwe can go to register to vote with either the national ID. They can also go there with the passport, but not that you can't go to register to vote with a driver's license. Again, there is need of proof of residence, but if you don't have it, you can simply go with your national ID, because the ZEC official will provide you with affidavits that you use in place of the proof of residence.
I am calling to you, every young person who's of the age 18 years and above, to take advantage of this opportunity to register to vote. We also have in specific provinces and centers facilities that have been opened by the government to ease the access of national identification cards, which are also very critical in the registration process to register as a voter.
We encourage you to register to vote so that your voice will end up in decision making in the national discourse. Thank you.
Check our social media handles as Nayo at Nayo Zimbabwe, at Leave No Youth Behind, or hashtag Leave No Youth Behind, and know the nearest center that is to your place or your house or your neighborhood, and take advantage and register today.